signs of foul play.
They noticed that there has been some type of violent struggle here.
As the investigation unfolds, secrets are exposed.
He had questions about his sexuality.
And a monster is revealed.
He was very controlling. He had a history of abuse.
I felt that he had like an evil spirit.
But justice doesn't come easy.
He manages to make bond and is released from jail.
He had a new girlfriend and allegedly assaulted her.
You are a demon, you're evil, you're possessed.
September 20th, 2016. It's Tuesday afternoon in the Houston, Texas suburb of Cypress, an affluent community on the northwest side of town.
Cypress is such a suburban, quiet area. The crime is not that high out there. Cypress is known to be a family-friendly environment where people can come and feel safe.
But today, the family of 32-year-old nursing aide Amalia Alexander is starting to worry.
Amalia was supposed to pick up her nephews from school that afternoon, but she never showed up.
She was supposed to get Laura boys, but when she didn't come, Laura got worried.
So I started calling. I'm like, okay, well, let's just see where she at. Phone. I got nervous. I felt like, you know, something was off.
Hey, sis, give me a call.
It was unlike her to be gone and not show up without, you know, at least letting Laura know.
When Laura calls Amalia's workplace, there's even more cause for alarm.
My sister didn't show up for work.
Wait. She didn't call in?
She didn't call in, like no call, no show.
At first, we tried not to panic, but the more hours and minutes went by, the more worried we got.
And once Amalia has been MIA for a full 24 hours, her loved ones decide it's time to take action.
We were really worried, and Laura made a police report. I was there, but I just kind of played the background a little bit to be more support for Laura during that time.
We haven't heard from her in over 24 hours. She always has her phone on her. It's completely out of character for her to disappear this way.
They made an official missing persons report with the Harris County Sheriff's Office.
Where is she? What's wrong?
A kind and caring person to her core, Amalia Alexander, or Maya to her friends and family, had a bubbly personality and an infectious laugh.
Everybody loved Maya. She is so funny. And I smile when I even say her name because she makes everybody happy. She had this laugh. It's hilarious. You'll laugh with her laugh.
She was a nurse's aide, and she was pursuing her degree at Houston Community College to become a nurse.
She was so caring. She loved to bring everybody together. She was just a really sweetheart, an angel on this earth, no matter what. Like, she was a blessing.
She's really outgoing, adventurous, beautiful. She was the life of the party, so she liked to have fun. But she wasn't really dating too much. She was focused on school and work.
Less than a year earlier, Amalia had gotten out of a tumultuous 7-year relationship.
When they broke up, I convinced her to move closer to me. She found an apartment right down the street, and it was pretty cool.
And although Amalia wasn't necessarily looking for love, a chance encounter in April 2016 made her think she might like to try again.
Hey, how's the day going?
Good.
She locked eyes with this handsome guy. They ended up chatting and exchanging numbers.
The handsome guy was 32-year-old Jarvis Hickerson. And right away, he struck Amalia as a mature, ambitious person.
He was a landscape.
I'd love to take you out this weekend if you're free.
I'd like that.
Before long, Amalia found herself in love again.
They were spending a lot of time together, and it started getting pretty serious after just a few months of dating.
He was buying her stuff and getting her rings and clothes, taking her to the mall, taking her out to eat.
But now Amalia has gone missing, and her loved ones are fearing the worst.
Once 24 hours had passed without any sign of Amalia, her family decided to file a missing persons report.
It's completely out of character for her to disappear this way.
She's not returning or answering any phone calls, and she didn't go to work. Something is going on.
It was not like Amalia to not show up for work and to bail on Laura, you know, with the kids and plans with the family and stuff like that.
When's the last time you saw her?
The evening of the 19th.
Her nephews.
Hey, they're in bed.
Oh, thank you, sis. You're a godsend.
Laura had a really long day at work and was exhausted.
I was in the bed and I was half asleep.
Jarvis is here, so I'm about to head out.
I guess he was outside and she was like, I'm about to go to my apartment for a minute.
And I'll get the boys from school tomorrow, okay? Just get some rest.
That's the last thing. She stood at my door with that little black and white dress on, and she left.
That's the last time Laura ever saw her sister.
Social Security started with a promise. You work hard, you pay in, so Social Security will be there for you. AARP has worked with our nation's leaders for more than 65 years to make sure America keeps that promise. And now, to protect and strengthen Social Security for you, your
32-year-old Amalia Alexander was equal parts beauty and brains.
She was an ambitious young lady. She had a lot going for her. She was in the medical field and going to school and just had a bright future ahead of her.
After getting out of a tense 7-year relationship, Amalia was seeing someone new.
A 32-year-old business owner named Jarvis Hickerson.
Jarvis owned a landscaping business and gave Amalia a sense of security she didn't have in her previous relationship.
But now Amalia's family is reporting her missing after a stressful 24 hours without any sign of her.
They had indicated.
Amalia's sister Laura says the last time she saw Amalia was on the evening of the 19th.
Laura believes Amalia left with Jarvis that night, which means Jarvis might be the last person to see Amalia before she disappeared.
She's concerned that he could have something to do with her sister's disappearance.
After taking down the information from Laura, deputies passed the case over to the Missing Persons Unit.
The first thing investigators want to do is speak with Jarvis Hickerson.
Hello, is this Mr. Hickerson?
Yes. Jarvis is very amenable to the phone call and is providing information.
He confirms that he picked Amalia up from her sister's house on the evening of the night. Up from her sister's house on the evening of the 19th.
I mean, she's been having car trouble lately, so I gave her a ride back to her apartment.
Jarvis mentions to detectives that he dropped Amalia off at her apartment around 1 a.m. and went immediately home after.
He also admits that their relationship has been rocky lately.
Unfortunately, you know, we've been reevaluating our relationship, you know, we've been seeing other people.
In fact, Jarvis says he isn't the only man Amalia has been seeing.
He thought Amalia had went to Florida and was staying with the guy.
he said, you know, I haven't seen her, I've never heard from her.
Do you know this guy's name?
Unfortunately, no. I think he's someone she used to date before me.
Jarvis says he's been really concerned for Amalia's safety ever since he heard she hasn't been in contact with her family.
He's tried calling, he's tried texting. He even became so worried he called her job, but there was no response.
After getting off the phone with Jarvis, detectives ramp up their investigation.
They register Amalia in the National Database for Missing Persons. They also issue a BOLO, which allows law enforcement in the Houston area to keep a lookout for her.
Next, investigators head over to the apartment complex where Amalia has been living.
We didn't locate her car at the apartment complex.
At this point in time, they don't know if it's a homicide or not. They just know that there's a person missing and they're there just to perform a welfare check at the apartment unit.
Once inside, detectives quickly determine that neither Amalia nor anyone else is in the apartment. But that doesn't mean their search is fruitless.
Amalia was described to be a clean person, but inside of her apartment, it was very disheveled.
They noticed that there has been some type of violent struggle here.
It was trashed, just all across. You know, it's not how Amalia lived. It was a pretty bad amount of damage in there.
Both the bathroom mirror and the living room TV have been broken.
It was torn up. I mean, big screen TV was completely shattered. The mirror in the bathroom was shattered. There was glass all over the floor.
It's time. Did he name his killer?
With more than 2,500 active cases, Texas trails only California in having the most open missing persons investigations in the country. In March 2021, the Texas Attorney General's office established the Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit. This unit aims to provide local law enforcement agencies across Texas with the necessary resources to investigate unsolved homicides, missing persons cases, and more.
The Cheez-It craves can happen anywhere. So eat Cheez-It any way you can.
Houston detectives have just found evidence of a violent struggle inside the home of missing 32-year-old nursing aide, Amalia Alexander.
They do see evidence of some type of physical altercation.
The apartment is in disarray, and it looks like there had possibly been a fight in there or a struggle.
Was Amalia attacked inside her own apartment?
Detectives want to see if there's any signs of a break-in. Perhaps Amalia confronted an intruder and it went badly for her.
But there's no indication that someone broke in.
Detectives to one conclusion.
It's clear that this is an inside job. Someone that Amalia knew.
Detectives head to the complex's main office to inquire about surveillance footage.
Surveillance footage would be pivotal in this case if police could see who entered and exited that apartment.
Unfortunately, the complex's only security cameras are located at the front gate.
Management tells them we have to get with the company that controls that and we'll get that to you.
In the meantime, apartment management has some other important information to share with detectives.
Amalia had been in contact with management asking to move to another unit because she felt like she was being stalked, harassed.
Amalia didn't give any names, but she did say that she was being harassed by an ex-partner.
Detectives start reaching out to Amalia's family and friends, trying to identify the mysterious ex-boyfriend.
Upon their investigation, they come across a name: Desmond Price.
And what detectives learn about Desmond sets off some alarm bells.
Desmond has had a history of violence against Amalia. Sometime in 2010, Amalia had to file a police report for Desmond cutting her with a knife. There was another report filed in May of 2013 where Desmond again assaulted her and accused her of cheating, leaving her with a bloody nose and a black eye.
She really had a rocky relationship with Desmond. They eventually broke up.
Detectives' attempts to reach Desmond are unsuccessful.
This certainly seems suspicious.
But when they sit down with Amalia's sister Laura, she tells them they're investigating the wrong man.
We're both young. You know, he wasn't perfect, but he's not not a bad person. They just had stuff going on.
Laura is insistent that there is only one person who could possibly be responsible for Amalia's disappearance.
Look, I'm telling you, Jarvis has something to do with this.
Laura says you all need to circle back and look at Jarvis Hickerson.
I knew he did something to my sister.
Laura says Amalia and Jarvis began dating 6 months ago.
In the beginning stages, Amalia was happy. Everything seemed to be going really well.
But eventually, his true color started to show.
He was very controlling.
He was described as very possessive over her, and there were some concerns there.
He seemed to...
over her, and there were some concerns there.
He seemed to be really clingy. He didn't want to leave her side. He didn't want her going anywhere without him. We just couldn't understand it. I felt that he had an evil spirit.
It seemed as if he was trying to isolate her from her family and friends, you know?
He tried to keep her away from me and my children. She started to not come around so much, and we lived so close. And that's why I knew something was off about this dude. He knew I didn't like him, and we didn't get along at all.
Laura says Jarvis's controlling behavior towards Amalia eventually turned physical.
They had a history of abuse.
And I'm like, this person right here, honey, you are a demon, you're evil, you're possessed.
Appearance. Houston detectives thought an old flame named Desmond Price could be responsible. But Amalia's sister Laura is convinced there's only one man who could be involved. Amalia's most recent boyfriend, Jarvis Hickerson.
Laura tells detectives that Jarvis has been physically and verbally abusive. His main goal was to isolate and control Amalia.
It's none of your business.
Amalia would get a cell phone, and he would break the cell phone because he was very jealous and didn't want her communicating with other guys and things like that.
I'm like, you are a demon, you're evil, you're possessed.
1 week before Amalia went missing, he made a big scene in public.
They were at an IHOP, and there was an incident there where Jarvis saw
and everyone kicking her, cursing at her, and everything.
But Laura says the violence didn't stop there.
He left her there, went back and trashed her apartment.
He took her keys to her car and actually went to her apartment and damaged her apartment.
He totally destroyed the apartment. It was just a mess. It looked scary going inside, just from him just tearing it up.
And I'm like, oh no, he needs to be stopped.
That was enough for her to stand her ground and leave him and file the charges that needed to be filed to stop him.
The police ended up arresting Jarvis and charging him with family assault and some criminal mischief. They filed what they call a MOAP, a Motion of Emergency Protective Order. They filed what they call a MOAP, a Motion of Emergency Protective Order. And Jarvis was not supposed to have any kind of, communication with her.
But the next day, it was clear Jarvis wasn't taking no for an answer.
He was arrested that night on the 12th, and apparently on the 13th, he posted bond and he was out of jail on the 13th.
After he got out of jail, Jarvis showed up to Amalia's door holding a bouquet of roses and an engagement ring.
Hey, baby. Can you please forgive me?
He bought her some flowers. It was wild. It's like a movie. She's like, oh my God, he's trying to propose to me.
He was trying to do everything he could to get her to drop this pending charge.
Will you marry me?
However, Amalia was having none of it.
Amalia slams the door in his face and says, leave.
Hell no. That's what
In the meantime, Amalia reaches out to the apartment complex to request a change of apartment.
So, do you think that he held a vendetta against her because she rejected him?
Well, that's not the only reason.
Laura says Jarvis had some secrets he didn't want to get out.
Jarvis had questions about his sexuality and was upset that Amalia knew.
She said that he messed with dudes.
He was afraid that she would tell people.
But in the days leading up to Amalia's disappearance, Laura says Jarvis figured out a way to weasel himself back into her sister's life.
My sister thought she can help him. She was so sweet. And I'm like, you would never be able to help a demon. I seen through him.
To Laura's dismay, Amalia left with
that out.
That's the last time Laura ever saw her, was when Amalia said, I'm leaving with Jarvis.
If you've never been in that position, it's hard to figure out why the victim, why is it so hard for them to get out of it? I think a lot of us, you know, that haven't been in her shoes would be like, oh man, she just should leave him. She should just get away from him. But in their mind, they're like, no, I gotta stay in this because of whatever, financial reasons, support reasons. They may be afraid to leave him.
When Amalia left with Jarvis that night, Laura was half asleep and so exhausted, the danger didn't really register.
But now she's convinced he's done something terrible to her sister.
I'm telling you, he knows where she is.
Maybe she was like, well, maybe I'll get him out of here and he'll just do something to me and not kill my sister and her kids.
After speaking with Laura, detectives are inclined to agree. Jarvis Hickerson is the key to finding Amalia.
Throughout this investigation, we could never get past him. There was a lot of things that just kind of led us to believe that this is our guy and this is who we need to be focused on.
When detectives dig more into Jarvis's past, what they find gives them even more cause for alarm.
He is a criminal. He served 2 years in jail before, and he has 7 felonies.
Jarvis's rap sheet stretches back more than a decade and includes not only theft and assault, but also convictions for cocaine and illegal firearms possession.
To investigators, it seems Jarvis's landscaping business may just be a front for illegal activity.
As a means of making money, he would go out and sell stolen property.
A lengthy rap sheet isn't enough to make an arrest. But when the surveillance footage from Amalia's apartment complex finally comes in, investigators are hoping for a slam dunk.
In the footage, detectives can see Jarvis's pickup truck pull into Amalia's apartment complex just around 12:40 a.m., just as he claimed.
Jarvis indeed did drop Amalia off at 1, but he didn't leave like he told them initially.
The truck goes into the apartment and you don't see it leave until sometime around 3 a.m. or so.
What was he doing at her apartment for 2 hours?
And after Jarvis leaves the apartment complex, He shows back up an hour. He shows back up an hour and a half later.
He leaves at 3:04. He comes back at 4:23.
Jarvis had told people that he had dropped her off. He never mentioned coming back to her apartment at all.
But when he came back, there was nothing in the bed of the truck.
So it comes back and it's there for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And then this time when the truck leaves, you can clearly see a large object in the back of the bed that was not there when the truck entered.
Looks like it might have been covered up with some type of tarp.
To detectives, this object looks like it could be a human body.
We suspect that may have likely been Amalia.
We're reviewing surveillance footage of 32-year-old Jarvis Hickerson driving in and out of Amalia Alexander's apartment complex on the night she went missing. Houston police are more convinced than ever that he's involved in her disappearance.
There's what appears to be a large object in the back of the truck. It looks like it might have been covered up with some type of tarp. We suspect that may have likely been Amalia.
November the 23rd, they head to Jarvis' house with the warrant in hand with the intention of arresting him.
He was actually staying at a family member's place at the time.
As police are monitoring the house, they see Jarvis pull up in that same truck from the surveillance footage.
Go, 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 go.
Stay right there. Jarvis Hickerson, yeah, you're under arrest.
Fortunately, police are able to take Jarvis into custody without incident.
While deputies transport Jarvis to jail, detectives search the truck and find something that makes them confident they're on the right track.
They found a bone in the truck bed, which was a huge discovery.
The bone fragment prompts detectives to search the rest of the home. And it doesn't take long to find more unsettling evidence.
While we were there, we actually came across Amalia's car covered with a tarp. And some other tools, lawn tools there. The trailer had been reported stolen.
Inside of that trailer, they discover shears, they discover a shovel and a saw, which they believe to have blood on it.
They took DNA, swabs of everything.
After completing the search, detectives head back to the station to interview Jarvis.
I knew from that point when I started talking to him that it was going to be one of those cases where he's probably not going to admit to it, but let me just do what I do to see if he would finally come around.
Jarvis refuses to give any sort of statement.
Jarvis asserts his Fifth Amendment right and remains silent.
But even though investigators are confident that Jarvis is responsible for Amalia's disappearance, they're still no closer to pinpointing her whereabouts.
And with Jarvis continuing to remain tight-lipped, they don't expect much help from him.
However, records from Amalia and Jarvis's cell phones, they finally get a solid lead.
Amalia's phone was last seen pinging in an empty field in Conroe, Texas.
Jarvis's phone and Amalia's phone went from her apartment to the Conroe area in the woods, probably about 25 or 30 miles away. And so their phones were pinging at the same time in the same location.
Once we kind of got a general location of the phone areas, we were looking and searching.
Houston investigators enlist the assistance of statewide search and rescue organization, TXR.
They are comprised of a group of volunteers that go out looking for missing people when they believe missing people are deceased, to help the families get closure to find the bodies.
We basically knew that the lady had been murdered. They had a suspect. They had an area where a cell phone ping was made, and they gave us that area to search.
There was some ponds and things like that up there that we searched.
We got there about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. We stayed until dark, and we rotated people in and out. But we didn't solve the case. We didn't find the body.
Investigators hit a dead end with it.
Over the following days and weeks, tips continue to trickle in, but they all lead to more dead ends. For Amalia's family, the thought of never knowing what happened to her is devastating.
I felt distraught because although she was missing for a while, we still had hope that maybe she was out there somewhere alive. We just couldn't wrap our heads around it. It broke everybody's heart.
Everybody that knew her took a part in trying to look, and it was just so stressful.
But on November 30th, more than 2 months after Amalia's disappearance, investigators get a call from police in Conroe.
Finally.
Years. You know, my sister be in my dreams a lot. When she was missing, I feel like she was trying to show me she was there, but I didn't know where to look. I want the world to know she was here. I want them to know her story, and I don't care if it's hard for me, you know, to get through it. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to make sure that she lives forever. Her name will live longer than I will. I'm even trying to write a book about her story. Whatever I gotta do, I'm gonna do it while
Dr. Miller.
Houston detectives have just received word that human remains have been located near where searches for missing 32-year-old Amalia Alexander took place 2 months earlier.
When I got that call, I'm thinking they may have found her finally. And as morbid as it may sound, I was hoping it was her because I wanted to give the family some closure. I didn't want them to have to go wondering where her body was.
Harris County investigators immediately head to the scene.
It was some woods near a church. We were able to determine that those skeletal remains consisted of a skull with some teeth, a rib, leg bone. There was also some pink nails that we found. Her sister talked about she used pink nail polish, you know, to paint her nails.
she was polishing her nails pink before her disappearance.
After the remains are sent to the crime lab, the tragic reality is confirmed.
Unfortunately, it was Amalia.
They was able to identify her because of my DNA. When I went to do the DNA, the lights was flickering, and I'm like, her spirit is with us. I'm a firm believer of all that. I was angry for a really long time. Like, why, my sister? Why this way?
Yeah, rough day. We figured that might be the end result. We just couldn't believe that that could happen to her.
However, the level of determine.
The medical examiner, they ruled it a homicide, but could not determine the cause of death.
Based on the body being exposed to the environment, to the wildlife for weeks, an autopsy could not be performed by the ME.
Even without an official cause of death, detectives are ready to confront Jarvis Hickerson, hoping this time he will confess.
I tried to talk to him a second time. I confronted him with the information we had regarding the phone records, the surveillance video, and him giving this story as to his whereabouts and what was going on.
Look, Jarvis, we found her. And you're on the surveillance as the last person seen with her.
Despite all the evidence police have collected, Jarvis refuses to admit any involvement in the homicide.
I ain't do it.
And then he starts making some really odd comments.
He said he didn't really love Amalia and was actually a bisexual man after he dropped her off at home on the 19th.
Man, I ain't kill her. I been over her.
He denied any involvement in her disappearance, and then he stopped talking.
Man, I'm done.
Even without a confession, the investigators have all they need to bring charges against Jarvis for Amalia's murder.
It was clear at that point that they had probable cause to file charges for capital murder against him.
However, as relieved as Amalia's loved ones are to finally see Jarvis behind bars, it's not long before he's back on the streets.
Jarvis manages to make bond, and he's released from jail. He's required to wear an ankle monitor.
At this time, the judge felt like bond was appropriate because despite the evidence being overwhelming, it is circumstantial evidence. He's still a presumed innocent person unless proven guilty.
He's taken back into custody after police discover he's been tampering with his ankle monitor.
He cut it off. If you think about it, if you're facing life, capital murder, once you cut it off, what you have to lose? He shouldn't even been out.
And tampering with his ankle monitor wasn't Jarvis's only offense while he was out on bond.
He had a new girlfriend and allegedly assaulted her.
Again, you know, same pattern. He was violent, he was abusive, and he tried to choke her. She called the police, and he actually got charged with that.
Following his rearrest, the judge revokes Jarvis's bond and sends him back to jail to await trial.
In September of 2024, Jarvis finally...
We argue that essentially he killed her because she had called the police on him for the assault that had happened on the 12th.
He had such a long, lengthy criminal history that he felt if she pursued the charges that he would go to prison for a very long time. So that was his biggest concern.
The details of the murder itself remain murky, but prosecutors believe that when Jarvis dropped Amalia off at her home on the night of September 20th, they got into a heated argument.
She already had some damage to her apartment from when he trashed it on September 12th. But even more damage was done on this night.
In his rage, he attacked her, causing her to sustain injuries.
And this time, he didn't stop there.
I suspect he probably strangled Amalia, choked her, and killed her that way.
As Jarvis tried to clean up the scene, he panicked and stopped midway, opting to move Amalia's body to another location.
Investigators believe Jarvis disposed of Amalia's body in Conroe and then went about his life.
There is a boatload of circumstantial evidence that ties him to the crime.
However, some of the forensic evidence threatens to throw a wrench in the prosecution's case.
Shockingly, when the bone fragment found in Jarvis's truck was sent in for testing, they determined that it didn't belong to Amalia.
It turned out to be non-human, so some sort of animal bone.
It also turned out that all the items from Jarvis's trailer tested negative for blood and negative for Amalia's DNA.
They really didn't find anything that they could tie to Amalia or this case back there. It was all landscaping equipment.
But despite the lack of direct evidence, the prosecution's case is enough to convince the jury.
Jarvis is convicted of capital murder, which comes with an automatic sentence of life in prison without parole.
That was the best news, that the jury heard us. They had sympathy for what Maya went through.
However, for Amalia's sister Laura, It's still not enough.
What's the point of being Texas if you can't get the death penalty? That's what I wanted, and I don't understand why they didn't throw that in there. I'm not satisfied at all, but that's fine.
When I gave my victim impactment statement, I said everything I wanted to say, especially calling him a monster. We got our vengeance.
I just wanted to smile in his face and look him in his eyes, and that's what pushed his buttons to let him know that you thought you got away, didn't you? He got so mad and stood up looking crazy.
I think he said this is bullshit. He kept saying he doesn't want to hear it.
His voice was so deep, it was like demonic. It was kind of scary.
When Amalia Alexander met Jarvis Hickerson, she never could have expected what was to come.
She had so much ahead of her and opportunities ahead of her, and unfortunately, she ran across a man that would end that laughter and light.
I miss her. I just wish she was here.
My sister didn't die for nothing. Her story may help other people, you know, and that's why I go speak, because she lived through me, and I'm going to help other people. They need to know what's the signs. Your intuition is the sign.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence 799-SAFE.
Anthony was a great person, man. Kind-hearted, loved his kids, and he'll give you the shirt off his back. When we got the news, I got to like a corner, and I just balled up, man, and was just crying, because I couldn't believe it.
He spotted someone sort of pop out from behind the house, wearing all black.
Multiple gunshots ring out, followed by the sound of screeching tires.
He felt very disrespected, and so he wanted revenge.
He's been humiliated. You've got to retaliate.
He was so angry, so bent on getting one guy that he didn't care who else had to get hurt.
I found it pretty chilling. He showed absolutely no remorse.
The city of Rock Hill, South Carolina, sits just 20 miles south of Charlotte.
The Rock Hill community is grown up around the downtown area, and then, of course, neighborhoods keep building out of that. And so the neighborhoods closest to downtown are the oldest ones. And then things that begin to push out towards York and Charlotte and Fort Mill, some of the newer, more modern type neighborhoods. But overall, the whole community is very focused on sports, athletics, great school system, lots of parks and playgrounds, and generally a really great place to raise a family.
On August 9th, 2015, it's around 11 p.m. when multiple calls come into the Rock Hill Police Department's 911 dispatch center.
At this time, the neighbors heard 8 to 9 gunshots ringing out. No one knows what's going on. There's chaos on the scene.
Noise complaints are extremely frequent, especially in the Frank Street area. Hearing gunshots also is not infrequent, even if it's just something innocent like someone shooting in their backyard for fun. But in this case, the noise complaint coincided with gunshots. There happened to be other officers nearby who heard those as well.
And they heard multiple gunshots ring out, followed by the sound of screeching tires.
The officers who are already close by are able to get over to Frank Street pretty quickly.
There were quite a number of people around the victim who was in the front yard.
They find a man laying in the grass, face first, bleeding from his head with an apparent gunshot wound.
He was shot twice, once in his arm and once in the head.
It appeared he saw the shooter and threw up his arms to block the shot, but when he was shot in the head, he immediately went down.
They located a faint pulse on him. He was still alive at the scene at the time.
They roll him over to administer first aid, and they find the gun underneath him.
The gun was just lying between him and the ground. It's a handgun. So it was pretty clear that he had either been holding it or it had fallen out of his waistband where he fell. But they did just treat him right there until the medics arrived.
Since the .380 caliber gun was found underneath Anthony, police think that he was carrying it.
They didn't know exactly what had happened, but one, it's not unusual for people in that neighborhood to carry weapons for protection, and two, it could have easily been assumed that he and another person were possibly shooting at each other. They wouldn't have known that until they got the area cleared and were able to begin searching for spent shell casings. He also had his South Carolina identification in his pocket.
The man is identified as 30-year-old Anthony DeMond Hart.
The victim's still alive. They're trying to work him, trying to save him. He is transported to a hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Many of the people who are out in the street know Anthony, and so word gets around pretty quickly.
They called me and it was like, man, Anthony just got shot. I was like, what? So, like I said, I got the keys, took off to the hospital. His friends was there and family was there. It was kind of a couple laughs at first, just joking about things in the past, but because we didn't know the severity of it.
Anthony Hart was born on August 12, 1984.
Anthony was born and raised in Rock Hill. He lived there his whole life.
He got a little brother. He kind of took him under his wing. You know how it is growing up with sisters and brothers. You yelling at them and fussing and fighting. You know, it's always yelling. Somebody yelling at somebody. Anthony act just like his father. His father is loud, just like Anthony was loud. His mother, she was laid back. We met in high school. If I could describe him with one word, it'd be loud. You knew Anthony was somewhere nearby and didn't even see him, but you heard him.
Anthony had a lot of friends. He played sports and his mom's house was always filled. He had a lot of personality and a really big heart.
The list goes on with very kind, hard moments he did. And he'll give you the shirt off his back. Me and Anthony graduated in 2002. Anthony went straight into the work field. We both did, kind of started working right after high school. When it came down to it, to pay the bills, we were hard workers.
He became a father in his early 20s, and then he went on to have 2 more kids.
He has 2 boys and a little girl. He loved his children. He was a great, great family man. He was a great father.
Anthony eventually went to school to be an electrician. He thought that would be a good career and he would be able to support his kids. So when he wasn't with his kids or working, he liked to hang out with his friends in the neighborhood.
In our free time, we played cards. We loved to gamble. We might gamble on who walking in the door next, but it was mainly cards, dice, stuff like that, football games. We would gamble on anything.
He was a good guy who worked hard and kept a low profile. He loved his kids and would help anyone who needed it.
He was one of those guys that you just wouldn't expect to have no drama, you know, no beef.
On the night of August 9th, 2015, word that Anthony had been shot shocks his friends and family. They gather at a hospital in Charlotte, where they wait for an update.
Mama and Daddy, they were there because we didn't know, you know, the situation at first. Everybody kind of was filling in what was going on, so I kind of got filled in when I got there.
Anthony was shot in his left temple and twice in his left forearm. Apparently, Anthony was trying to block the shots with his forearm, and Anthony then died not long after he arrived at the hospital. The shot to the temple proved fatal.
When we got the news that he had passed away, man, it was just like, chaos everywhere. Everybody started screaming and crying. I remember me personally, I got to like a corner and I just balled up, man, and was just crying because I couldn't believe it. We just all just broke. It was terrifying.
Back in Rock Hill, homicide detectives arrive on Frank Street.
I do not know exactly if it was during transport or very shortly after. I remember that we had not been on the scene all that long before we were notified that he had died.
This seemed as a regular shooting call, but after he died, it took it to a whole different level. It was now a homicide case.
We located 7 shell casings that were of a .22 caliber. They were all near the back of the house, though. There were none near Anthony or his, where he fell. The shooting had happened from sort of the back side of the house towards the side of it, which would have given a direct line of sight to the roadway where he was located.
The casings looked like they were from some type of long gun or rifle. They all appeared to come from the same weapon.
But not from the .380 found underneath Anthony.
It was apparent that his weapon had not been fired. It was fully loaded. There were obviously no spent casings around him.
It was pretty clear that he was carrying a gun, probably for his own protection, but he never had a chance to fire it in his defense.
Police speak with the witnesses.
People had fled the area after the shooting happened for fear of their safety. But there were quite a number of people who had been inside the home there playing some cards that night, just hanging out, sort of having a kickback, as they call it. And they were all mostly outside looking at the situation.
One of them is a man named Roderick Wright.
Mr. Wright was just a longtime friend of the victim, Mr. Hart, and he was another one of the persons there that evening playing cards and hanging out.
Roderick tells investigators that Anthony had also been in the house.
So they were just generally hanging out that evening. I don't know how long they had been playing, but at some point he stepped outside, I guess, to get some fresh air.
Roderick went with him.
He was speaking with his friend Roderick Wright, and they were just catching up outside the home where there was a card game going on.
And as they were speaking, Roderick spotted someone sort of pop out from behind the back of the house, wearing all black.
It seemed weird, and it put both of them on edge.
He saw that person step back behind the house, and he said to Mr. Hart, let's go back inside. They began to walk back into the house out of concern for this man that he saw in the shadows.
So Anthony hesitated for a minute, and then he said, I got to get something out of my car.
Anthony went to his vehicle. We don't know for sure what he did, but our assumption is that he got his handgun out of the vehicle to protect himself and his friend as they were then going to go back inside the house where they would feel more safe. And then they were turning to go walk back inside.
Before they could get inside, the man reemerged.
This man stepped back out from the side of the house again and indiscriminately opened fire.
There was just gunshots, one after the other, just out of the blue.
Rock Hill, South Carolina police are investigating the shooting death of 30-year-old Anthony Hart. Investigators on the scene speak with Anthony's friend and witness to the shooting, Roderick Wright.
A man came from the side of the house, dressed in all black, just opened up fire, started shooting, and he said he panicked and fled the scene.
He was definitely on edge and scared and had gotten his car and sped away. So it was a very traumatic moment for him.
The witness stated that he fled from the scene in fear of getting shot himself. So as soon as he heard that the coast was clear, he came back.
Roderick's statement helps investigators develop a theory.
If someone is dressed in all black with a weapon sneaking up behind the house, the theories would then be that they were there to intentionally rob or kill someone. It wasn't a random act of violence. It wasn't like an argument that went sideways. And because there was a card game going on inside the house where money was being used in the betting, it was assumed that possibly the suspect was there to rob the people of their money at the card game.
Other witnesses who'd been at the card game report that one man left early and angry.
Sean Durham had been at the card game and lost his money and left angry and upset that he had lost the money. And it was assumed that he had come back to rob everyone to take back his money. That was the initial rumor that was circulating in the streets, and we heard that from many different people that night.
But Roderick can't say one way or another whether Sean was the shooter.
Roderick was only able to say that the suspect was wearing all black because the backside of those houses on Frank Street is very dark, especially that late at night. Very few of them have any back porch lights. And so it would have been pitch black, and Roderick would have been looking from a well-lit position in the street into darkness, and so he would not have been able to give any sort of a positive identification of the shooter.
They actually find Sean and talk to him. He admits that he left angry, but insists that he had nothing to do with the murder. He says that he went to a friend's house and stayed there the rest of the night.
Sean is still a suspect this time, but he could be lying about his alibi, so this time he's just a person of interest.
There's nothing connecting him to the shooting. No proof.
Detectives plan to follow up on Sean's alibi. In the meantime, more tips come in.
Investigators learned about a shooting that happened a week prior, and they're figuring out that this could be connected to the shooting.
On August 2nd, a man opened fire on a home on Frank Street, just 3 houses down from the scene of Anthony's shooting.
A male subject came in the evening, stood in the front yard, and opened fire into the house through the front windows of the house.
There were 9 people inside the home. Based on witness statements of individuals inside the home, it appears that one of the first or second rounds caused the blinds, the window dressings to fall. There were 2 small children, toddlers really, who were playing in the floor of the living room. He continued to fire multiple rounds into the house before fleeing the scene.
There were several people at home at the time, including a grandmother, a pregnant woman, and children.
Somehow, no one was killed.
The shooting was immediately reported by the family that lived there. The male subject inside had either been grazed by a bullet or by glass, and so he needed some medical treatment. The family was clearly traumatized by the shooting.
Investigators identified a suspect in the shooting.
One of the residents of that home. She did not know his name, but she knew him to go by Q.
The next day, by utilizing the nicknames that had been given to us, we were able to produce a photo lineup, go back to the family, and one of the young women was willing to cooperate with us and identify him as the shooter.
They learned that his real name is Quinteris Miller, and he was just 17 years old.
Based on her identification and the other evidence collected in the investigation, Miller was charged with those 9 counts of attempted murder and discharging a firearm into dwelling. Police were able to obtain warrants for his arrest on those charges, but he evaded police.
We knew that through tips that he had gone back to Chester and was in hiding. And so we contacted the City of Chester Police and the Chester County Sheriff's Department, let them know that he was wanted for an attempted murder, and they began doing surveillance and looking for him.
There's no clear connection between these 2 incidents, just rumors.
When we see these crimes happen in the neighborhoods, we know that there are witnesses, but oftentimes people don't want to speak up because of their distrust for law enforcement, for one, and that relationship has been strained. In addition to that, they're fearful of retaliation.
You have 2 shootings just a few houses away from each other within a week. Are they connected? The only way to find out is to find Quinteris and talk to him.
Anthony seemed like an all-around great guy. He was not someone that the police dealt with. His family was very kind and cooperative, and overall it was a situation where a truly innocent person had been killed and needed justice. I met with Anthony's family shortly after the shooting because, of course, we wanted to know if Anthony had any problems with other people who might have been there to intentionally target and hurt him. And of course, the family couldn't think of any reasons at all why someone would want to hurt their son. Early in the investigation, especially that night, there were not many working theories for us to run with, particularly after Roderick came and said that he saw the shooter behind the house. That set up a situation that was something like an ambush.
After 30-year-old Anthony Hart dies during a shooting in his Rock Hill neighborhood, police look to question the suspect in another shooting, Quinteris Miller.
He allegedly shot into a house full of people, which included a toddler and a senior citizen. There's a warrant for his arrest now, but now he's on the run.
Word on the street is that the two shootings are connected.
People are saying that the same person who shot up the house shot Anthony, but police don't know if that's true, and if that's true, what the connection might be.
As police continue to hunt for Quinteris, they take a closer look at the first shooting.
The family did tell us that it happened probably because of the fight that took place there in their front yard earlier that day. The family made the connection for us because they knew that Quinteris was present at both incidents.
On August 2nd, a man by the name of Swedarius Beatty got into an argument or a fight of some sort with his girlfriend at the time.
Beatty's girlfriend is Quinteris Miller's sister.
He received a call from his sister that she was there, and so he went over there to help protect his sister.
Quinteris Miller arrived on Frank Street with a group of other people to confront Mr. Beatty about the altercation with his sister. During that confrontation, things escalated.
A young woman got out some pepper spray, and she sprayed Quinteris' sister and everyone who was in her car. Quinteris got mad about that and hit the pepper spray out of the young woman's hand. Well, that was Beatty's sister. So Beatty got mad and attacked Quinteris with the brick.
Suddenly, Beatty hits him in the face with a brick and knocks him unconscious.
And then he began to, again, hit Quinteris more times while he was unconscious.
The witness goes on to tell police that some good Samaritans jumped in to help.
There were two individuals about two houses down, a father and son, who were sitting on their porch and observing this go down in front of the houses on Frank Street. And after Mr. Miller had been knocked unconscious, Beatty was on top of him and continued to assault him. These two men got up and ran to help Mr. Miller, and they were able to effectively get Beatty off of him.
Anthony and his dad ran over and broke up the fight. And then Quinteris' sister and their friends were able to drag him into a car and get him out of there. No one was charged for anything that took place there because all the parties did not want to cooperate or press charges.
Rumor has it that Quinteris left the incident humiliated.
Beatty essentially got the best of Mr. Miller.
He felt very disrespected by the fact that he had been hit with the brick, and so he wanted revenge.
So at this point, Quinteris is embarrassed. He's been humiliated. Here you've come to help your sister, but you underestimated what you were walking into. So you expected to come in and save your sister, but instead, really someone had to save you. So now he's got to figure out what is he going to do to eliminate that, to make sure that he's not going to be made fun of, that people are not going to lose respect for him. Because oftentimes that's what it's about. It's about respect. And whether someone's going to challenge you or not, you've got to come back and make sure that you reestablish and retaliate for what has happened to you.
Miller returns to Frank Street and he approaches the house there, and standing approximately 10 feet from the living room window, he opens fire with a pistol into the home.
Swaderis lived in that home with several family members, so it's suspected that Quinteris was just shooting into the home hoping to hit Swaderis. It's clear what happened there that day, but what does any of this have to do with Anthony Hart?
On August 13th, we got an anonymous tip.
The tipster says she overheard a disturbing conversation between Quinteris and two other men, Gabriel Mobley and Xavier Thompson, the night before Anthony's murder.
She heard the Miller and the others discussing what he had on his mind that night, that he needed a rifle to hit a lick, which is a term that essentially means that he wants to commit some sort of crime.
Gabriel says his brother has a rifle that he offers to Quinteris.
Gabriel Mobley retrieved the gun from inside the house and gave it to Mr. Miller.
The tipster says the men left the house immediately.
All three young men, Gabriel, Xavier, and Quinteris, left with the gun towards Frank Street.
Moments later, the tipster says she heard gunfire.
Witnesses say she heard gunshots. We know that this is the same day and time that Anthony was shot. And we know that three men headed in the same direction. And this is the same gun that killed Anthony.
Investigators are on the hunt for 17-year-old Quinteris Miller, a suspect in multiple crimes, including the murder of Anthony Hart.
A tipster tells police that Gabriel Mobley gave Quinteris a rifle that he may have used to kill Anthony, so they searched his home.
Because he was on probation, we had the right to search him and his house based on this tip that we got. And so we searched the house thoroughly, and we found a box of .22 caliber ammunition that had been intentionally hidden in the bathroom.
After searching the home, investigators found the bullets that matches the crime scene, but they don't find the gun that killed Anthony Hart.
He could not possess any ammunition at the time, so he was in trouble for that on the probation side of things.
They're getting closer, but there's still so many unanswered questions. Like, why would Quinteris kill Anthony? It just made no sense.
Then, on August 19th, investigators get the chance to ask him.
We knew that through tips that he had gone back to Chester and was in hiding. And so we contacted the City of Chester Police and the Chester County Sheriff's Department, let them know that he was wanted for an attempted murder, and they began doing surveillance and looking for him.
Quinteris was arrested in Chester, then transported to Rock Hill Police Department.
They spotted him getting into a car in downtown Chester. They just simply pulled him over, and he gave no problems. They arrested him and transported him up to Rock Hill for us.
At that point, Quinteris was arrested for attempted murder charges for shooting up the house.
Quinteris agrees to an interview.
He freely told us about the fight that happened in the morning, but then he denied having come back to shoot up Mr. Beatty's house that evening.
He denies involvement in any of the shootings.
Instead, he offers up an alibi.
He denied any involvement, but he did admit that he was in Rock Hill that day, that he was with the Mobleys, and he had claimed that he was playing video games with Gabriel Mobley at the time of the shooting.
And then once we got to the questioning of the murder, he requested a lawyer, and he ended the interview and did not discuss that at all. We informed the family of updates of the case as it was going along. So once we had arrested Quinteris for the first shooting, that's when we spoke to the family.
Anthony's dad is familiar with the house where Quinteris allegedly opened fire after the fight.
He and Anthony had friends who lived a couple of houses down from where the incident took place.
It was a very common place for them to be, and that's when he remembered.
He and his son, Anthony, they witnessed a fight on Frank Street.
Anthony's father put two and two together and let me know that he and Anthony had actually intervened in that fight. Because to him, he didn't know that it had anything to do with the murder, and so he didn't think to mention it because it's not uncommon to find teenagers, fighting in the streets. During the fight, Quinteris Miller was knocked unconscious, but the male subject who was assaulting him did not stop hitting him even though he was unconscious. So Anthony and his father intervened to prevent Mr. Miller from getting more injuries while he was unconscious on the ground, and they helped break up the fight.
This is it. This is the connection between the two shootings, but it doesn't make sense.
If Anthony tried to help Quinteris, why would Quinteris seek Anthony out and gun him down?
Meanwhile, a former suspect in Anthony's murder is also in custody on unrelated charges.
Sometime shortly after the murder, Sean Durham was arrested on a completely separate case.
Sean was considered a suspect early on because he got angry and stormed out of the card game when he lost money.
While he was in the York County Detention Center, he was not given a bond for his charges. And he desperately wanted a bond, and so he volunteered to work with the police to clear his name, because obviously he had heard the rumors that he was being named as the shooter in Anthony's case. And so he and his lawyer were cooperative with the police.
On August 24th, Sean and his attorney reach out to detectives.
Sean Durham, he volunteers to help police get Quinteris to confess.
He stated that if he was put in a room with Miller, he felt sure that he could get Miller to talk about it and to admit that he was the shooter in that case. They arranged to have both Miller and Mr. Durham transported from the jail to the law center in Rock Hill, which is where the Rock Hill Police Department is located. They placed a camera and some audio recording equipment in a room. They brought Mr. Miller and Durham into that room.
On August 28th, 2015, police in Rock Hill, South Carolina, listen in as Sean Durham attempts to pull a murder confession out of Quinteris Miller.
Quinteris and Sean are placed in a room alone together with a hidden recording device.
The investigators then went to another room where they watched, I believe, a live feed from the camera as Durham spoke with Miller about the incident. And it was that conversation between Miller and Durham that really sealed Q Miller's fate. He asked him, were you just trying to get one under your belt, meaning a murder, taking a life? And Miller just shook his head and laughed.
It would have given Quinteris a lot of street cred. And so he seemed quite happy to talk about the murder with Sean. Sean was able to get Quinteris to open up and talk about the murder because Quinteris would have thought that his information would be safe with Sean. Quinteris looked up to and respected Sean. They ran in the same circles, had the same friends, had been through a lot together.
How many shell cases have they found?
They said they found like 7, 8.
Sean really just approached Quinteris from a position of being sort of excited about hearing the details of the case.
Sean starts pushing. He starts getting at the question that police really want answered. Why? And what Quinteris says is a complete shock.
Why? They want me to be wrong.
And he asked him, he said, you mean you killed the wrong person? And again, he laughed and nodded his head.
And it wasn't even meant for him. That's crazy, man.
He then went on to talk about who the intended target was, that it was Mr. Beatty, and the reason why he was seeking retribution against him for being assaulted and getting knocked out a week before.
Quinteris admitted that he accidentally shot the wrong guy because he thought Anthony was the man who hit him, where in actuality it was Swandarius Beatty who hit him.
Quinteris thought he was returning back to the same house he'd previously shot up, where Swandarius lived.
He still had revenge on his mind, and so he essentially decided he wanted to go back and finish what he had started.
We're talking about a boy who's probably never done anything this serious before. He's walking through an extremely dark area. His eyes may not be adjusted correctly. He was actually several houses down. Quinteris essentially said that he just popped out. He started spraying, which means just shooting the weapon at the two people that he saw.
He mistakenly believed that one of those two men was Mr. Beatty. He indiscriminately opened fire on these two individuals, striking, one of the bullets struck Mr. Hart in the head and killed him.
Oh my God, damn, bro, that's crazy, man.
Quinteris knew that he had not killed Beatty, but it didn't have much of an impact on him as to who he had actually killed.
No more sounds on.
I found it pretty chilling too that he showed absolutely no remorse. To find out that you mistakenly killed an innocent man, someone you didn't even know, and to show no contrition or remorse, I thought was particularly chilling about Mr. Miller.
Even more chilling is the fact that Anthony attempted to help Quinteris.
The real tragic irony in this case is that the man that he mistakenly shot, Anthony Hart, was one of the two individuals who saved him a week before when he was being assaulted in front of the houses on Frank Street. Anthony Hart intervened for Miller.
Investigators finally have what they need.
Once we heard Quinteris give that information, it confirmed for us that this was all tied back to the August 2nd shooting at Beatty's home. This was just a 16-year-old who wanted revenge because he got hit in the fist with a brick. It really just made the whole thing that much more tragic.
With that confession, that was enough for officers then to charge Mr. Miller with the murder of Anthony Hart at that time. Under South Carolina law, he was an adult, so he was tried and prosecuted as an adult.
Following a taped confession, Quinteris Miller faces over 20 charges, including murder and multiple accounts of attempted murder. Investigators continue to work the case, interviewing his alleged accomplices in the murder, Xavier Thompson and Gabriel Mobley.
G. Mobley and Xavier Thompson went with Quinteris to commit the crime.
They put one another as the accomplice to Quinteris, and they tried to protect themselves. And so Xavier ultimately said it was Gabriel and Quinteris who went to go do the shooting. Gabriel said no, it was Xavier and Quinteris who went to do the shooting. So they were being somewhat cooperative, but it was hard to tell which one was telling the truth. It seemed a little bit more spur of the moment for Xavier and Gabriel to be involved in the case. It seemed like they were going along with their friend because it might have been an exciting thing. Maybe they didn't know exactly what he intended to do, although he did take a firearm to go do a lick. They weren't completely unaware.
They tell investigators that they dumped the gun in the woods.
They hid the gun somewhere. We never did find the murder weapon.
Prosecutors don't want to take any chances. They offer Quinteris the opportunity to plea.
Because we did not have direct physical evidence like fingerprints or DNA. There was no video of him committing it. That would still be a strong case, but not a guaranteed one.
For months, Quinteris and his attorneys refuse.
The case was a little bit more than a year old, and we had been unable to reach a plea agreement. The case was set for trial in the early part of 2017. It was actually not until just days before this trial was scheduled to start on a Monday morning that we received confirmation from Mr. Miller's attorney that he wanted to accept our offer to plead guilty. Miller wanted to plead guilty under the doctrine of North Carolina versus Alford, so he did not actually have to admit his guilt, but he acknowledged that there was substantial evidence against him, enough that there's a substantial likelihood that a jury would find him guilty. And with the evidence confirmed against him, he accepted the state's offer and pled guilty for the negotiated sentence of 30 years. He cannot be released early, he cannot make parole.
Quinteris does not make a statement or give any details of his crimes.
He was so angry, so bent on getting one guy that he didn't care who else had to get hurt along the way for him to get that revenge against just one person. So in his case, an entire family was traumatized. There were an elderly woman and a pregnant woman, children who their lives were put at risk when Quinteris shot up their home. Obviously, an innocent man, Anthony, lost his life over this, and ultimately Quinteris never got the revenge he wanted.
Part of the tragedy is that he didn't just take Anthony Hart's life, he threw his own life away. And over something as just trivial as being knocked out in a fight. You know, I think that it's clear from his actions, mistakenly shooting the wrong person, that he's a very dangerous person. And his propensity for violence is obvious from the facts and the evidence in the case.
Anthony's killer was caught, and he is getting the consequences for what he did to Anthony. But I'm sure that his family would rather have Anthony alive today than, another young man in prison.
There's just something about Anthony Hart acting as a good Samaritan and intervening for this man who ultimately killed him that just would be so hard for me, I think, to stomach as a family member.
Like, this guy literally was helping you out, and you not paying attention, or you just filled with rage and want a retaliation, just come out and just start shooting, and not knowing you just took the life of the guy that helped you out. It was crazy. It was just stupid. That shows you what type of person Anthony is. A very, kind person, will give you the shirt off his back and, help anybody in need.
For what?
I heard about it. Please put on a low priority. This because it was not high priority at the time. No one has physically seen anything, just suspicion, so you don't want to rush to a scene like that.
Moments later, a more urgent call comes in.
Hello, 911. Man, where are you at? Where are you at?
He gives the address. It's the same as the first call.
What's going on?
My girl just came and my girl's bleeding to death. Please! Tina, please, keep moving, Tina. Keep moving, Tina. Tina, keep moving, Tina. Oh, Lord. Yeah, somebody cut her.
Okay, we've already got police and ambulance on the way.
Now, it's concrete, you really got something, so now we got to step it up because someone's in danger. It's time to roll.
When the officers arrive, the male caller meets them outside. He identifies himself as Casey Anuna.
He was very distressed and was screaming for help.
I was like, man, someone stabbed my girlfriend, apartment number.
One of the officers spots a woman ducked behind a row of cars. Then she takes off running.
You're just thinking maybe she done did something or something's going on, because now you don't know.
Officer Brown was able to catch up. He sat her down on the parking lot and began asking her questions. And she immediately just responded that her roommate had been in a fight, was injured, possibly dead, and that she didn't know anything else that was going on.
KC shows a second officer to the apartment.
Officer Christy English ran inside of the apartment to check on the victim and immediately tried to start giving her CPR and helping her. She had been stabbed right above the heart and the chest, and she had several other cuts in her upper torso area.
Casey identifies the victim as his girlfriend, 21-year-old Tina Stewart.
I know she's a fighter. That's one thing I knew. And sometimes, you know, they tell you pray. So I'm telling God, like, you know, make it happen.
Clantina Tina Stewart was born October 17, 1989, and raised in Memphis, Tennessee.
She was a tough little girl growing up, and that toughness carried her onto the basketball court.
She was a extremely great high school athlete, starting in the 10th grade, 11th grade.
She kind of came in late to the scene, like the basketball scene. Even though she was older than me, I still had been playing longer than her. But when she came, she was a force. Like, it was crazy. She came out of nowhere.
My senior year, you know, she was, you know, one of the top guards in Memphis. And if you're one of the top guards in Memphis, you're one of the top guards in the state. And which, you know, got her a scholarship to one of the best programs in Tennessee.
In the summer of 2008, Tina headed to Murfreesboro to begin training at Middle Tennessee State University.
The men's basketball team was in the weight room. We were lifting, working hard, and then I remember the girls' basketball team came in. We were trying to see who the new girls there, who's new on campus, and things like that. So, I mean, that's where I first initially saw Tina Stewart.
He's a basketball player for MTSU, just like Tina. They hit it off from the beginning.
We both had a passion for the same things. So, and it's kind of rare where you have a person who can share the same things.
She was a free spirit, you know? She wasn't too much, it was kind of hard to tie down. But he gave her a little balance, because he wasn't gonna be all over the place, and she wanted to be wherever he was.
This love that we had in college, you know, it was, you know, it was genuine. I would say that, definitely genuine.
After 2 years of living on campus, Tina moved into an off-campus apartment. She was paired with a roommate, 18-year-old Shanterica Madden.
Shanterica was a good student, very studious. She had straight A's throughout high school. She had a full academic scholarship because she had worked so hard as a student. They probably looked at the background that they were both from Memphis and thought, you know, this is probably going to be a good match.
Shanterica knew of Tina because she was, you know, popular basketball, popular staple in the community as far as sports. But Tina didn't know who she was.
When it came to personality, Tina and Shanterica were opposites.
Shanterica Madden is a very sheltered, quiet, withdrawn, introverted mouse of a person. She is not someone who walks in a room and you just immediately gravitate toward, which is the exact opposite of Tina.
Tina, she had tons of friends, very outgoing person. A lot of people loved her.
After living together for a few months, the roommates discovered more differences.
Tina was really clean.
You could tell that Shanterica didn't have a lot of life experience. Like she didn't know how to, you know, clean up a kitchen and maintain cleanliness. She was very sheltered at home.
Shanterica's housekeeping irritated Tina. But it was KC that bothered Shanterica.
Shanterica and Tina had disagreements about Tina's boyfriend, Casey Anuna, staying over.
That was a shocker because when I was over there, I was never like in the areas like long periods of time or, you know, I was always trying to, you know, I'm in the room or I'm gone, I'm out of the apartment. You know, I wasn't trying to be in the same space as them because I understand that, you know, this is not where I stay.
Despite the friction, Tina kept her focus on her studies and basketball.
In the spring, the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders were scheduled to play in the Sun Belt Conference women's basketball tournament.
But just 3 days before the tournament begins, Casey calls 911 to report that Tina has been stabbed. Paramedics arrive.
They started doing CPR on her immediately, even though they could tell she's injured pretty bad.
As paramedics load Tina onto a stretcher, Casey goes back outside to speak with police in the parking lot.
I saw the stretcher come down. You know, I'm just like, man, I'm praying even harder now in my mind.
Police begin to establish who's who.
You got a young lady was laying there in a pool of blood.
Casey Anuna is the young man who made the call. The woman who is running from the police is Shanterica Madden.
They had no idea who she was or how she was involved.
At the beginning of an investigation, everybody is going to be a suspect.
Shortly after 7 p.m. on March 2nd, 2011, detectives with the Murfreesboro Police Department are investigating the brutal attack on college basketball star Tina Stewart.
She had a pulse, maybe a faint pulse, and they're gonna keep working on her.
Tina's boyfriend, KC, and roommate, Shanterica, are on the scene when investigators get an update on her condition. They learn that shortly after Tina arrived in the ER, she succumbed to her injuries.
She was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Tina was stabbed from the front and the back. So the wound that was right above her heart is what killed her. She bled from that because it nicked some sort of artery.
The lady, the police officer, she's like, she didn't make it. I just broke down.
Both Casey and Shanterica are escorted to the station.
They take me downtown. She been taken in for questioning.
You want to separate the two and get separate statements from each person. That way you can tell what's going on, who's telling the truth.
Detectives go inside Tina's bedroom where the attack took place.
The blood was along the wall, there was blood on the floor, on the bed. It was a very messy crime scene. This was a very violent attack.
But investigators are unable to locate what caused Tina's injuries.
We're looking for any kind of weapons. You got no weapon at this time.
They spot something suspicious in the kitchen.
When they search the apartment, they find a knife block that is missing a couple of knives.
Investigators also collect Tina's phone as evidence. Other than that and the missing knives, the scene yields few clues.
This is when you gotta slow down and take all the evidence and start talking to people one-on-one.
Back at the station, detectives sit down with KC. He explains what led to his desperate 911 call.
Casey had got done with practice and he and Tina had dinner plans. He sent a few text messages and the response that he got just didn't sound like Tina.
I get a text back like I'm in the shower. I look at it and I'm just like, you know, I've been dating this girl for 3 years. It's not how she texts.
He stated that she was more emotional. She sent emojis, I love you, more lovely-dovey type stuff, to where this was more generic.
You know, I see you later, not the letter C, she's spelling it out. And this person's not texting like that. I was living with my fraternity brother, a great friend of mine, and I told him, man, I want to go over to Tina's place. I don't feel right about it, you know? And I go to her apartment complex, I touch the door handle, and I was like, you know, I knocked.
Shanterica answered the door.
I was like, is Tina here? She's like, no, I haven't seen her. No, she's not here. I haven't seen her. So I was like, all right.
KC tells investigators that he decided to check her room anyway.
So I walk down the hallway. In the very back room is Tina's room. The door's open. And the TV's on, but the lights are off. So I'm just like, I kind of look back, you know, and I don't hear anything. I don't look down. I don't look up. She's not on the bed. I just like, she's not in here. I just like, you know. So I walk back out. And I'm walking towards the door, and I'm like, you sure you haven't seen Tina? You know, she's like, her voice changes, like, no, I haven't seen her.
KC made note of something he hadn't seen before.
Shanterica, he noticed she had bags and stuff packed too, and about to go out the front door.
And something tells me, like, turn around. So I turn around, and I go back to her room, and this time I turn on the lights. That's when I see Tina laying flat. So the first thing I said, we joke a lot. You know, we play. So I was like, get up, stop playing. Then I see the blood. I rush to her, I turn her over, and I see the blood everywhere. And I'm just like, my mind's everywhere. I'm trying to talk to Tina, like, hold on, fight, you know. Little to no response. But she still some life, you know. So I'm talking to her and call 911.
Shanterica heard him calling out.
She kind of had her head in the door and saying, it's not me, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. So she takes off. That's when I just kind of go towards, go after Shanterica. I don't want her to get away.
Responding officer came to the scene and saw him running after her.
Then I got downstairs, and that's when I was stopped.
You're really just left with a lot of questions. You know, what exactly happened? What was the cause of all this? What went down here in this apartment?
On the night of March 2nd, 2011, police in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, are investigating the fatal stabbing of 21-year-old Tina Stewart.
Her boyfriend, KC, is being questioned, and there's no reason to think that he might have done this. He's cleared pretty early on as a suspect.
KC tells investigators that he can't think of anyone who would want to harm Tina.
Like, I knew everything about this girl, Tina Stewart. You know, she told me everything. So it's like, nah, there was no other troubles going on.
Although KC does admit that tension between Tina and Shanterica was running high.
It was mostly about the cleanliness of, or the lack of, with Shanterica, leaving things around. You know, Tina was a very, you know, neat person. Then it was like taking things or touching things without permission as far as food, and she smelling the marijuana.
Shanterica started smoking weed in the apartment, regardless of whether Tina was there. And that was a big problem for Tina.
For Tina, since she's an athlete, she gets regular drug tests. And we learned that Shanterica is a casual marijuana user. Tina, you know, doesn't want this around her. She doesn't want to end up failing a drug test from secondhand smoke.
And she want to lose a scholarship, and she also want to be in good standing with her coach, because now, you know, if I'm a star player and I'm busted with marijuana, she might not play me, and there go my hopes and dreams.
She's just like, look, I'm not your mom, not your dad. You're in college. Just don't do it in the house.
Investigators prepare to interview Shanterica. But first, they speak with an officer who says he paid a visit to the apartment just before the stabbing, at Tina's request.
He was a off-duty officer living at the apartment complex. We call him a courtesy officer. Your job is to answer any call at the complex. Loud party call, 3 in the morning, you go answer. So he got a call from the office manager that there was somebody smoking marijuana at the apartment.
The courtesy officer made his way out there. Shanterica's asking, who called on me for this? How did you even find out about this? And Tina's coming out of her room saying, I'm the one who called.
He told Shanterica to toss out the weed, not to do that again. He didn't make a formal complaint. I think that he was just trying to calm the girls down.
Did tensions between the roommates rise even higher after Tina made the call? Investigators ask Shanterica.
I understand that apparently earlier this evening there was some sort of altercation between you and your roommate.
Shanterica says that shortly before 6 p.m., she was hanging out in the apartment with her friend Nene when the courtesy officer arrived.
I guess my roommate had called the front desk, and the front desk sent the police over. And I talked to him, and he was basically like, if he searched my room and he didn't find anything, then it'll be cleared. And if I told him the truth, so he searched, and he was like, well, you told the truth. And he said, but he's still gonna have to talk to the manager.
Already, investigators have caught Shanterica in a lie. They know that the courtesy officer found marijuana because they've already talked to him.
And after he left, I talked to Tina, which is my roommate. I talked to her. Then I knocked on her door and told her that I need to talk to her. And we talked. And it kind of got heated because we both kind of had attitude. And she kind of shoved me, and I kind of shoved her back. And then next thing I know, we was fighting. She kind of just slammed my head, so she was pounding my head, and I was pounding her face. And just with my hand.
Okay.
And then she pushed me to the ground. When she had my head, she pushed me to the ground, so I was right on the ground. And I gathered her. And she was like, get out of my room, get out of my room. So I left.
According to Shanterica, Nene left the apartment soon after, and Tina was right behind her.
My roommate, she was doing something. I think she was putting on her shoes because I seen her kind of roam around moving, because there's no what she was doing. And she turned down her TV, and she put on her jacket, and she walked out the door.
Shanterica says she also left.
I walked all around the parking lot, kind of because I was trying to get out the nerves out of my system. And I didn't shut the door, I just kind of shut it. I didn't lock it, I didn't bring my keys with me.
And then she said, on her way out, she did notice that there was a guy hanging out the dress that she'd never seen the complex before.
She says there's a man with dreadlocks who was in the area, who was carrying a knife.
When she returned to the apartment a little while later, the front door was open.
The door was still, it was like, wasn't closed. I kind of shut it.
The front door?
I shut the door, and it wasn't closed. It was kind of like cracked, so I just thought she came back.
She says that Tina must have come back while she was gone, and this dreadlocked man must have attacked her.
He black, he got dreads, and he kind of tall. Everybody taller than me, but he got probably like 5'6". And this is the third time I've seen him over there.
Detectives don't buy it. This whole story seems made up and really unlikely.
Now, you're at a critical point right now, all right? You're at a fork in the road, okay? And I want to help you choose the right fork. Something bad happened tonight.
But Shanterica sticks to her story.
All I know, I did not kill Tina. Tina was perfectly fine when I left.
She is very, mechanical in her movements, the way she talks, the way she responded to detectives. During the whole interview process that night with police, she might as well have been a robot.
investigators noticed something else about her behavior.
During her interview, the whole time she's kind of using a card and kind of picking the blood off the ends of her fingers.
The fight she described having with Tina wouldn't have left blood on her hands. So where did that blood come from?
The Infiniti QX60. Comfort redefined. Luxury rediscovered.
I'm Chef Andre Rush. I've seen action in Iraq. I've served 4 presidents. Now I'm taking on my toughest mission, rescuing America's failing restaurants. Boot camp is about to begin. Do you want to cook or not?
This guy has not taken any prisoners.
Push it up! How do you know when you give up? I believe in you. I need you to believe in yourself. Let's check out your new restaurant.
Did you hear about the plan from TV Wonderland? Sitcoms on the weekends with friends. Matter of fact, let me take you back how it started. She said she liked the Cosbys, but she's living single, but tonight she wanna party. Let's have a good time, I'll show you a different world. Moving on up, you know I need a girl. Staying up late, watching Sanford and Son. I'm coming, Elizabeth, for it's the big one. TV1, they always get it done. Hit it.
The new TV Wonderland. Fridays and Saturdays starting at 8 on TV1.
Hey, it's Chef Jannard here, and I'm about to take you on an incredible journey through the heart and soul of your favorite destination. I'm talking about Black culture, Black excellence, food, music, Black and brown people that look like me, doing it big. Woo! It's a journey through culture, one bite at a time. I'm about to give you the ultimate Black experience.
I love it. Savor the City, a new series coming in 2025 on TV1.
Hi, I'm Anthony Anderson, and I play an ad executive on my sitcom Blackish, so that means I know a thing or two about numbers. For instance, 8, that's the number of seasons Blackish entertained you. 175, that's the number of episodes we did. And 1, as in TV1. That's where you can now watch all the episodes of Blackish. Up top. Yep. I think that adds up to a good time.
Watch Blackish every Sunday through Friday, starting at 6 on TV1.
Hours after the death of Tina Stewart, Murfreesboro police interview her roommate, Shanterica Madden.
They noticed that she had been absent-mindedly picking dried blood from the tips of her fingers during the interview. They're gonna go hard on her now.
Listen to me, okay? Now, I'm gonna be straight with you, okay? And I've been doing this for a long time, okay? And you've got some marks on your face. I've been sitting here looking. It looks like your cheek might be a little bit swollen. I think what happened was you and Tina got to an argument, got to a physical fight that got a little out of hand. Another thing I find interesting is that you're right-handed, you got blood right here on the crook of your right hand.
She stuck to it for the long time, for the longest, till she finally started breaking down slowly. And finally she said, well, I'm gonna tell you the truth.
When we talked about whatever it was, I turned around and was heading into my room, and I think I kind of bumped into her, and she was like, don't bump into me. And she shoved me, and I shoved her back.
The fighting escalated, and Shanterica knew she was outmatched.
She says that when she and Tina were fighting, she was scared because Tina was an athlete and much stronger than her.
I kept saying, that hurt, because my head started paining real bad. And she had a knife sitting, I think it was on the bed. So, I don't know what she was doing. She was cutting something. But she had a knife sitting in the bed, and I grabbed that knife after, because she still had my head down. She was pounding me on the head, and I grabbed the knife and just kind of went like this. When she was coming towards me, I kind of went like this, and I just held it and let it up. and she fell.
She does admit that she stabbed Tina, but says, of course, that it was in self-defense.
I didn't mean for this to happen.
And the problem with the whole thing is, why didn't you call the police at that time?
I had my phone in my hand. I was like, I need to call somebody. I need to call somebody. And I was gonna go call the police. I had my phone, but I couldn't find the number that I wanted to call.
Where's the knife at now?
I don't remember. I don't remember if I dropped it or if I took it outside when I went outside. I don't remember.
You remember who would want it? Be sitting out there in that field or something, and some kid get a hold of it or something like that.
I don't think so. Okay. I can't remember.
Investigators get word that officers back at the crime scene may have the answer.
A neighbor saw Shanterica around the dumpster just after this incident occurred. Police check it out. They do find a knife wrapped in a blanket that's covered with blood and is obviously their murder weapon.
This knife also matches a knife found in the apartment.
Investigators confront Shanterica with the new evidence.
They finally went to the dumpster and found the knife and the blanket, so now I got a piece of the evidence. And now I'm gonna tell Miss Madden, I have this.
Shanterica changes her story again.
She does admit that she basically just freaked out afterwards and decided to get rid of the knife in the dumpster.
She didn't call 911, but instead went to dispose of the knife. That puts another dent in her claim of self-defense because it looks like she was trying to hide what she'd done.
Meanwhile, news of Tina's death has brought the MTSU campus to its knees.
The Lady Raiders were well loved. This particular team was very well known because they were very talented and they were just very popular. This whole situation shocked everyone more than I think that anybody really understood.
Police hold a press conference to officially announce Tina's death. They also ask anyone with any information about the crime to call in.
At 6:20 p.m., Shanterica's friend, Renee Nene Reese, calls police.
Renee Reese tells police that she was there when the security officer came to the apartment and when Shanterica confronted Tina.
Renee Reese, friend to accused killer Shanterica Madden, tells investigators that she was in the apartment when an off-duty police officer was summoned by Shanterica's roommate, Tina.
And then as soon as he left, she said that Miss Madden immediately went to Tina's room, knocked on the door, and confronted her.
She says Shanterica was mad at Tina for calling the off-duty officer on her, and they started arguing, and it got heated quickly.
She said she went back into Miss Madden's room because they was arguing very loudly, and she wouldn't be a part of it, and she could hear banging and arguing.
Renee says she also heard someone saying, "She got a knife," and "Stop, my heart hurts," or "My heart is beating," something like that. At some point, things got quiet. Then Shanterica knocked on the bedroom door and Renee let her in. Shanterica said, "We have to go." Renee saw blood on Shanterica's arm, so she asked Shanterica what happened to Tina, and Shanterica said she left. Renee says she glanced towards Tina's room.
She did say that she could see Tina's leg hanging through the doorway. So she did see that she was down and injured, so she knew something was wrong.
Renee says she grabbed her purse and headed for the door.
In the living room, she said she saw Shanterica holding a blanket, stuffing it in a big, clear plastic bag. As she was leaving the apartment, she saw Shanterica drop the bag and a piece of knife fell on the floor. Renee says Shanterica tried to hand her the bag.
She asked her actually to throw it away for her. She said, "No, I'm not gonna do that."
Renee left. She tells police that she placed the first call to 911.
Okay. All right. What's your name?
I don't want to say my name. I don't feel comfortable saying my name.
Shanterica tried to get her friend to help her cover up the crime. She didn't call 911. This is not looking like self-defense.
They charged her with first-degree premeditated murder.
News of Shanterica's arrest is another blow to the stunned community.
When she was officially charged, I wouldn't say it was a sign of relief. I just wanted justice to be served, you know?
Tina was a superstar in Memphis. You know, everyone knew who she was.
Investigators focus on building their case.
They know from the start that she's going to show up to court claiming self-defense, so they need to be able to counter that.
Investigators discover a series of postings on Tina's social media from the day of her death.
Before the incident, Tina was on Twitter blasting Shanterica on social media, saying that she didn't care anymore, that she was over it. She was sick of the situation.
At 5:37 p.m., Tina tweeted, "I just called the police on my roommate. I feel like a snitch, but I don't like this."
You could see where she didn't really want to tell on her. But then again, she wanted a scholarship, so she's put in a hard place. So what do? You do what you need to do.
At 5:58 p.m., Tina tweeted, "Police is here." Then, a minute later, "This gonna be too hot." And finally, her last tweet at 6:01 p.m., "I hope he finds some, please, please."
Tina saw how much she had on the line. Shanterica had everything to lose as well if her parents found out that she was doing weed. So they both had a lot to lose. It was a fire waiting to be started, honestly. Like, it just needed the right match.
Investigators speak with Tina's friend, Scooter Macklin. She tells them she was on the phone with Tina when Shanterica came in to confront her.
She asked Tina why she didn't let her know what was going on, but Tina's response was, "I had already spoken to you earlier this week about this situation being a situation and that it couldn't be one. This is what happened, this is the result." And she left the room. Like, me and Tina started back talking on the phone. She left the room for like 45 seconds, maybe a minute, and then she came back.
Miss Stewart was on the phone with Miss Backlund up to like 6:04 and the phone was disconnected.
And I'm calling back, but I didn't get a response. But by then, I got a text message that said, "Finna get in the shower, I'll call you right back."
By the time she gets that text, police think that Tina is bleeding out and Shanterica is trying to buy time by sending texts from her phone.
She did not try to help Tina. Instead, she tried to hide the truth about the situation.
On March 11th, 2011, 9 days after Tina Stewart was found dead, Shanterica is released on a $100,000 bond.
Shanterica didn't have any history of violence beforehand. She had never been arrested. She didn't have a juvie record.
I was the most disappointed about the fact that she was able to post bond. She posted bond and went to Memphis and went to the mall. My phone was going crazy again. Most people couldn't believe that she had the audacity to just be walking around in the world like that.
On May 9th, 2012, Shanterica Madden goes on trial for first-degree murder.
The courtroom stayed packed more than I'd ever seen it. Just overwhelming the number of people that came out to support Tina and her family. And Shanterica's family was there during the whole trial. Her mom and dad were right there in the front row behind the defense table the whole time.
Just as prosecutors anticipated, Shanterica pleads not guilty. claiming she acted in self-defense. She takes the stand to tell her version of events.
Tina confronted Shantirka, and that Shantirka was acting in self-defense, and that she just happened to see the knife that was in Tina's room on the bed and then grabbed the knife. The knife was already in Tina's room because Tina had been eating a snack or something, and there was a knife on the bed. It just happened to be there, and so she used that in self-defense in the heat of the moment.
Prosecutors argue that the forensic evidence tells a different story.
The blood spatter showed that Tina had been stabbed from behind initially, and then at some point had turned around and tried to defend herself. That aligns with what the coroner found during the autopsy.
You can see on her hands she was cut, and she was trying to defend herself from being attacked.
Tina was stabbed in her back, upper torso area at one point, so that doesn't lend itself to a self-defense argument.
They also argue that the knife wasn't on Tina's bed.
Nobody had ever seen Tina leave dirty dishes or food just sitting out on the bed. That was not her personality whatsoever. She was very clean, conscientious about being clean, and she usually didn't eat in her bedroom.
As soon as she went to grab the knife, she was formulating the plan, was their argument. That she had to make a willful decision to pick up the knife and to use it.
Shantirka did not immediately call 911. She did not try to help Tina. Instead, she immediately started trying to hide evidence, knowing full well that her roommate was bleeding to death on the other side of the wall.
On May 14th, the jury reaches a verdict.
The jury found her guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. They concluded that, yes, she was guilty, but they couldn't definitively say she planned this murder.
Later at sentencing, Shantirka received 29 years in prison, 25 for the second-degree murder charge, and 4 years added onto that for the tampering with evidence charge.
29 years versus a person that's lost their life, it's not equal. It's not equal. You shouldn't be able to, she can come out and still be able to at least do something, experience something, whereas Tina can't.
I've been watching the March Madness in the Final Four. I could see my best friend being one of those coaches. You know, I could see my best friend standing out there clapping and supporting some girls and giving them an opportunity to shine and show who they are. And that's ultimately what I feel like was taken from the world.
It was sad to see a beautiful young, girl like that who had such a bright future, who overcame so much, who was the first person to go to college from her family, to die in college. That's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how the story is supposed to end. You know what I'm saying? That's just not how it's supposed to end.
Tulsa, and because it is such a growing city, the crime kind of grows with it.
The growing crime rate keeps the Tulsa Police Department busy.
Police were working on a case where a man named Carl Duke Harris had been shot in a gang-related incident.
We were investigating the shooting, and the victim at that time was not expected to live, had multiple gunshot wounds.
What police don't know is that they are about to get a phone call that will take this case in an even darker direction.
Well, the Tulsa Police Department receives a tip through Crime Stoppers that there was a possible murder that had occurred that the police department was unaware of.
The caller tells police that 23-year-old Courtney Palmer had been beaten to death in an apartment.
The name is familiar to police.
We have an active case going with Courtney Palmer.
Courtney was a witness to the shooting of Carl Harris.
Police had been trying to contact him for a few days to give a statement.
Courtney Palmer had been involved in other crimes, but he was not known to be a violent criminal.
The caller tells police that not only was Courtney brutally beaten to death, it gets worse.
The caller says that Courtney's body was fed to pigs.
We've had at least one more victim that has allegedly been fed to the hogs in Muskogee, and that person has never been found. So that Crime Stoppers tips definitely has some legs to it. We take it seriously at that point.
Despite Courtney being a criminal and having a long rap sheet, most of the officers were fond of Courtney.
Courtney is kind of a mainstay. Even though he's 23 years old, I knew him when he was 8 or 9. He ran the streets and I was working patrol.
Unfortunately, when Courtney was a teenager, he kind of got involved with that street life.
Courtney got roped into the wrong crowd and made friends with members of the infamous Crips gang.
Despite his criminal involvement, Courtney was well loved. He was known as a jokester. He was known for his smile, that he can light up any room that he walked in. He can lift anybody's mood if they were feeling down.
He was gang related, but it was obvious to us that Courtney cared about his family, and his family cared about Courtney.
Courtney was a father to 3 children. They were the #1 priority in his life.
Courtney was a family guy. He had 2 daughters and a son. He stayed actively involved in his children's lives. The children were by 2 different women. Even though the relationships didn't last, he still stayed engaged with his children.
Courtney had a big heart. He would do anything for anybody. Just a very generous person was the impression I got about Courtney.
Everybody kind of knew Courtney Palmer. Courtney has some issues, but he was always respectful.
So who would want to kill this young father? And why? Police asked the tipster for more details.
So the anonymous tipster alerts police that Courtney was killed because there were rumors on the street that he was involved in setting up Carl Duke Harris, who was shot.
Police knew Courtney was a witness to this shooting, but this was the first time they heard he may have actually been involved.
The tipster claims a woman named Charletha Mack lured Courtney to her house 2 days after Duke Harris's shooting. This isn't the first time police have heard the name Charletha Mack.
Allegedly, Courtney Palmer was at Charletha Mack's house up north. We know that house. There's other killers that have been in and around that house. So when that name comes up, it leads credence to the Crime Stoppers tip. It just starts steamrolling that. All indications is that Courtney is going to be dead.
Tulsa police officers know they need to speak with 39-year-old Charletha Mack as soon as possible. They obtain a search warrant and rush to Charletha's home, hoping the tipster was wrong.
We go up and knock and announce at the door. I was the supervisor on that warrant, so I was outside the front door.
The door slowly opens, and Charletha Mack appears.
Charletha's demeanor at the time of the search warrant was initially defiant, that could not believe we were there. So what? Was what I remember her telling me. So what?
Charletha claims she had no idea what happened to Courtney. She hasn't seen him in days.
Police execute the search warrant, looking for any signs of foul play.
The house is not in disarray to the point where you would expect if a murder had occurred, a beating like we heard. We don't find Courtney, we don't find evidence that Courtney has been killed.
But Sergeant Walker and his team don't give up that easily.
We had included our crime scene folks coming with us as part of the service of the search warrant. That doesn't always happen, but we knew we were going to need their expertise in luminoling.
With the help of the luminol, crime scene investigators are able to uncover evidence in the bathroom that was invisible to detectives' eyes.
The luminol that was in the bathroom reacted in several places. The bathtub, the bathroom sink. So that lets us know that it's not just somebody that nicked their finger and they let a little bit and they wiped it up. It kind of is reminiscent to a beating, and that's a key part into our investigation.
His There's evidence that something extremely violent happened in that room.
This has started us to believe that we've got a murder and we've got people hiding it, so it's just going to be a matter of time.
November 17th, 2016. While investigating the shooting of Carl Duke Harris, police in Tulsa, Oklahoma, have received a tip that Duke's friend, 23-year-old Courtney Palmer, has been beaten to death and fed to pigs.
Many people believed that Courtney had been involved in setting up Duke when he got shot, but police did not believe that that occurred.
The tip has led them to the home of Charletha Mack, where the tipster claims Courtney was killed. Though Charletha contends she has no idea what happened to Courtney or where he is.
Her demeanor was one that we would expect of somebody that's been talked to by law enforcement before, used to getting her way.
However, there are clear signs of a violent altercation in Charletha's bathroom.
This was not a lot of blood, but it was a significant amount to know that what our investigation was leading us to is true. Somebody got beaten in the bathtub, on the tile, and at the bathroom sink.
As CSI documents the findings, Charletha Mack is taken back to the police station for an interview.
Charletha, once she was in the interview room, finally decided that the truth was about the only thing that she could keep straight. Her lies were just not going to hold up, and that's usually the case. So when she started telling us what happened, it fit absolutely with the investigation.
Police asked Charletha about her relation to Courtney Palmer.
Charletha tells police that Courtney often hung out at her house. He had a baby with her niece, and she considered him like a nephew.
Charletha says on the night in question that there were two other people staying at her house, 39-year-old Gerald Lowe and his girlfriend.
Mack, when we interviewed her, only knew Gerald Lowe. She knew Gerald Lowe's girlfriend, but did not know her identity. And of course, when she lies about one thing, we're going to call a liar on that one too. But she was stuck with the not knowing.
Charletha explains that Gerald, like many others in their circle, was angry about the shooting of their mutual friend, Carl Duke Harris.
Gerald believed the rumors that Courtney had something to do with Duke getting shot.
Charletha says she doesn't think Courtney was involved, but Gerald was adamant that he was to blame.
Around 3 a.m., Courtney showed up to Charletha's house.
She explains that Courtney just pops in, and that's totally understandable for Courtney's behavior. Courtney would show up when Courtney showed up, and he's obviously feeling a little bit triggered by the shooting of Duke, and he's talking to Mack about all that.
Charletha tells police she had no idea the horrors that Gerald and his girlfriend had planned.
Gerald quickly got violent with Courtney. He was slapping him around, kind of pushing him around, trying to get some understanding of what happened, his involvement with Duke.
As Gerald was assaulting Courtney, he encouraged his girlfriend to get involved. Once she got involved, she took things to a whole new level.
The woman sat on Courtney's lap, straddles him, and takes out a pocket knife and slashes him on the cheek.
Charletha says the couple used the knife to force Courtney into the bathroom, where things got even worse. Charletha says Courtney was telling them he had nothing to do with the shooting, but they wouldn't relent. She says she was in a state of shock, too terrified of Gerald and his girlfriend to intervene.
She could hear them beating him for several hours.
She gave gruesome details as what was going on, and she allowed that to happen. I mean, it is her house. At any point, she could have called 911. It's hard to feel sorry for Mack at that point.
She confirms that Gerald's girlfriend left the residence at one point, went to the convenience store down the road to get bags of ice. When the girlfriend arrived back at the residence, Gerald forced Courtney into the bathtub where it was filled with cold water and ice, and Courtney was forced to remain in the bathtub.
They then poured boiling hot water on Courtney as well.
Finally, with a rush of adrenaline, Courtney leaps out of the bathtub and tries to fight for his life. The tussle progresses into the hallway.
When Courtney started fighting back, Gerald grabbed him and began strangling him, at which time the girlfriend began to kick Courtney in the face and chest.
So at some point, Courtney stopped moving, he stopped breathing, and it was at that point Courtney was dead.
Charlitha says that she was petrified. She watched as Gerald and his girlfriend grabbed blankets to wrap Courtney's body and loaded it into a plastic tub.
They took it out to Gerald's white pickup truck.
Gerald and his girlfriend then drive away.
Police asked Charlitha where the couple went. Was Courtney actually fed to pigs, like the Crime Stoppers tipster reported?
As for what happened with the body after that, Charlitha said Gerald told her that he got rid of the body in a rural area outside the city.
With only one name to go on for now, detectives put out an APB for their new prime suspect, Gerald Lowe, and his white pickup truck.
Gerald had a long rap sheet, which included multiple drug charges, as well as multiple offenses of assault and battery.
But who is his girlfriend and alleged co-conspirator? Detectives are about to get one step closer to finding that out.
She's walking through the store like she doesn't have a care in the world.
There's no doubt this is their girl.
Of course, all murders are tragic, but boy, the way it happened, who it happened to, is kind of tragic. Courtney Palmer is one that sticks out. You just have to say that name and we know what you're talking about. A lot of us knew Courtney Palmer from when he was a little child. Courtney was respectful to law enforcement. I mean, he was doing illegal things, but he wasn't doing them to us. So that hurts us just a little bit.
In November of 2016, detectives investigating Courtney Palmer's disappearance and possible murder have just gotten a lead on two suspects. 39-year-old Gerald Lowe and his unidentified girlfriend.
Gerald has a long history with the law, but law enforcement are still trying to figure out who his girlfriend is and where they are now.
A witness to the crime, Charlitha Mack, has told police the gruesome details that she claims led to Courtney's demise. But one detail in particular piques detectives' interest.
During Mac's interview, when she finally decided to tell us what happened inside the house, she said at some point the girlfriend went to the Quick Trip to get some ice. And that really is a key piece because at the Quick Trip they're going to have a video surveillance.
Detectives let Charlitha go, for now, and retrieve the convenience store surveillance footage from the night of November 16th.
As they're viewing the footage from the surveillance, they see a white pickup truck pull into the lot in front of the convenience store. The same vehicle that Gerald has been known to drive.
The suspect is wearing a distinctive hooded sweatshirt with Cal written on it. You know, and we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Not that Cal is unusual, but it's not prevalent in a Big 12 state, you know, so we're not going to see a Pac-10 state come in.
The surveillance video shows the woman casually walking through the store, purchasing snacks along with 4 bags of ice. She makes the purchase and then leaves the store.
Detectives conclude this must be Gerald's mystery girlfriend, but they still don't know her name.
Once we get Lowe identified from the interviews and the information and all the surveillance video that we're gathering from the Quick Trip, everybody gets sent this information with those pictures on it. So maybe somebody knows that and will eventually call us and give us some information.
Not long after releasing the still photographs to the media, police get a tip. But it's not on the girlfriend. It's about Gerald.
The tipster says he has seen Gerald Lowe at Monica Scott's apartment. Monica just happens to be Courtney Palmer's ex-girlfriend.
Could Monica be Gerald's co-conspirator? Perhaps she started a relationship with Gerald after ending things with Courtney.
Detectives head to her apartment in hopes of getting to Gerald Lowe before he makes a run for it.
That information led us to the search warrant of Monica Scott's apartment. We knocked on the door. She answered the door.
When detectives arrive at Monica's apartment, they find her, but there is no sign of Gerald Lowe.
It's also clear Monica isn't the woman from the convenience store video.
We had talked to her, told her why we were there, and she was very cooperative at that point.
Detectives show Monica the images of the woman from the surveillance footage, and she is able to identify her right away.
Monica immediately identifies the woman as 25-year-old Michaela Riddle.
Michaela Riddle had kind of a rough life. She didn't have a very good upbringing. I think she had been abused in different ways. So she didn't have a very good life.
Michaela had difficulty holding down a steady job. That meant she had to couch surf from friend to friend's house to keep a roof over her head.
What Michaela really longed for was a man to help take care of her.
Then she met Gerald Lowe. Although he was a decade older, he was handsome and charming and had a smooth demeanor.
Unlike Michaela, Gerald had a decent upbringing, but he chose to rebel and live a life of crime.
Gerald Lowe is a very polite, very respectful young man. He used to do construction work and carpentry work, and that's how I knew him. And so I don't know that he had such a difficult background where he couldn't have done something different with his life.
Gerald was connected to the local chapter of the Crips, and he had a lengthy criminal record, but he kept Michaela safe. He made her feel comforted and protected.
The two quickly became inseparable. Gerald didn't have a home of his own, but Michaela didn't mind. She was used to the couch surfing lifestyle.
Michaela's hope was that they'd be able to lift each other up and forge a happier future together.
Even though they didn't have a house of their own, as long as they had each other, they were home.
According to Monica, Gerald and Michaela had been living with her, but she said she had not seen them in a few days.
They absconded kind of like, gypsies would do.
Monica tells police she and Courtney had a fight and broke up a few days before he disappeared. But when she heard he was missing, she was distraught.
Monica tried to reach out to him via phone, but she wasn't able to get in contact with him. She believed something terrible had happened to Courtney, and she started crying.
Michaela was at the house at the time and asked why she was upset. She admitted she was crying over Courtney.
Instead of comforting her friend, Michaela says something that chills Monica to the bone.
That's when Michaela responded, "Oh, you're never going to see him again."
When Monica asked what she meant by that, Michaela said, "This is about to be some First 48 stuff."
So that was a clear indication to Monica that her ex-boyfriend, Courtney, had been murdered.
Monica admits that she should have called the police right then and there, but she was scared and confused. She was hoping that Courtney would just come back home and everything would be back to normal.
Detectives ask Monica if she can give them any information that will help track down these potential killers.
Monica confirms to police that Gerald and Michaela do drive a white pickup truck, but she has no idea where they are now.
Then, Monica supplies them with one invaluable piece of information: Michaela's phone number.
Riddle's phone number, that's a key piece of evidence in any murder investigation. If we can get that phone number, then we can start doing work on that.
This is like gold for detectives. With this, they can track Michaela's general location.
Police are one step closer to getting justice for Courtney Palmer. Now, it's only a matter of time.
So they know that apprehending Gerald and Michaela is going to be the key to solving this case.
Of 2016, Tulsa police finally have a name for the female co-conspirator in the alleged murder of 23-year-old Courtney Palmer.
Police now believe that Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle are responsible for what happened to Courtney, but they still haven't found them or Courtney's body.
Now that they have Michaela's phone number, detectives hope it can lead them to where she and Gerald are hiding out.
Once Monica Scott was able to give us Michaela Riddle's phone number, we were able to get the GPS phone logs from the phone company, and then that gave us an area of town where there's several apartment complexes.
What's determined that the best course of action is for the police to just kind of slowly patrol these different apartment complexes and hotels in the hopes that they would be able to find this white pickup truck in one of the parking lots.
On December 4th, 2016, police finally find what they're looking for.
We located the white pickup, backed in, and then from there we were able to get that locked down, surrounded, surveillance set up on it. We were not going to lose the truck. Our intel person was able to locate and determine that Gerald Lowe's uncle stayed in an apartment right there where that truck was located. And then the investigation really starts to focus in on that particular area. We spend a number of hours surveillance on the truck, and then we decide to go up and knock on the door and get after Michaela Riddle and Gerald Lowe. It's kind of the most dangerous part of our investigation up to this point, because we're going to go and get two killers out of an apartment.
Prepared for the worst, police make their way to the apartment door.
We don't know what to expect. The most dangerous part was the actual confronting of Lowe and Riddle. And we decided to go in and pop the door open.
With tensions high, police enter the apartment. To their surprise, it appears empty.
Then we search an apartment for killers.
Realizing all hope is lost, Gerald Lowe comes out with his hands up.
We make voice contact with Lowe and we get him out, and Riddle is subsequently also found inside the apartment.
But Michaela is not going down without a fight.
Mostly I remember from them was Riddle's demeanor. She was just hateful and mean, and if she could hurt you, she would. So we had to be on our game to make sure we took her into custody without anybody else getting hurt or her getting hurt also. Lowe, on the other hand, was more agreeable. I think he realized that he was just going to take his chances explaining circumstances as opposed to fighting us at the apartment. Once they're in custody, it's kind of a sigh of relief.
Gerald and Michaela are placed in the squad cars while detectives scour the apartment for evidence.
It was obvious they were kind of couch surfing because their clothes were just there. They weren't hanging in the closet, so they weren't going to have a residence there. So it allows us to search the limited area, and then we're able to find the Cal sweatshirt, which is key to Riddle's involvement in this case.
Satisfied with the evidence collected, authorities take the couple back to the station for questioning. Up first in the hot seat is Gerald Lowe.
Detective White goes in there and explains why he's here. He kind of understands that, yeah, we're there for a reason. He knows what he did, but he still is in denial.
When confronted with Charlitha Mack's statement about his and Michaela's involvement in Courtney's brutal murder, Gerald shuts down.
Obviously, he has the right to remain silent. He imparts that right to an attorney, and once that happens, we're kind of done. So we leave the room.
Hands tied with Gerald, detectives hope his girlfriend will be more helpful.
She's as hateful in the interrogation room as she was in the apartment. Not cooperative. She's telling us that we should all have that information. And of course we did. But usually what we want to do is start a conversation and gather some type of rapport with her. But she was unrapportable, if that's even a word.
Michaela plays dumb. She denies knowing Courtney Palmer, Charlitha Mack, and Monica Scott. The only person she claims to know besides Gerald is Carl Duke Harris, the man many believed Courtney set up to be shot.
I do remember her making some comment throughout this case that Harris was her cousin, so there's family blood, if you can believe her.
Detectives try hitting her with the hard evidence.
When shown the still photographs from the surveillance video, she denies being the person in the video.
She was not going to have any of it from us, and basically the interview was shut down, mainly because it was obvious that she wasn't going to give us anything. She wasn't going to cooperate.
She demands to be taken to her cell so that she can go to sleep.
With neither suspect cooperating, it's more important than ever that investigators find Courtney's body if they hope to get convictions.
Detectives are afraid that they may not ever be able to find the body of Courtney Palmer.
But before long, they'll get another tip that could help them do just that.
The caller says that Courtney's body was fed to pigs.
The scene was horrendous.
It was just awful, the disregard that was shown for the young man.
December 2016. Police in Tulsa, Oklahoma finally have their prime suspects in custody for the tragic disappearance and alleged murder of 23-year-old Courtney Palmer.
Investigators believe Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle tortured Courtney for hours and ultimately strangled him to death.
Obviously, after the arrest, we still have to locate Courtney's body. We want to put Courtney out there on the media. Here are the people that are involved. We show the truck, we show Lowe, we show Riddle.
And it doesn't take long for another tip to come in.
The next day, we get a phone call from Muskogee. So it all starts to roll downhill at that point in locating Courtney.
According to the tipster, Gerald had been seen living in an abandoned farmhouse miles away in Summit, Oklahoma.
Apparently this area used to be a pig farm, or somebody raised pigs there before. It was just kind of a desolate country area. There was a neighbor who lived next door who knew Mr. Lowe, who had said he had seen him there around the time these events were happening.
They head out to Summit in search of Courtney's remains, or the pigs who ate them.
We're able to locate the house that the caller called in after viewing our media presentation and search the premises.
Inside the dark, abandoned home, investigators scour for any sign of Courtney or evidence that might connect their perps to the scene.
They actually find a vacuum erection device and a sock. They know they can test these for DNA and hopefully tie Gerald and Michaela back to the scene.
Unfortunately, they don't find any other evidence, such as the pocket knife used against Courtney. They don't find the plastic tub that the couple supposedly used to transport the body.
In the backyard, investigators don't find any pigs, but they do find something very disturbing.
In a fire pit was the remnants of a human body.
The body was found just burned in a heap on a mattress, I believe.
The body there that was burned in the fire pit is unrecognizable to us. It's obviously a human skull. You can see that. So we know we have a body, but we know who we're looking for. At that point, I think we were confident that that's going to be Courtney's body.
The remains are sent to the lab for DNA testing. And it is confirmed that they are, in fact, Courtney Palmer's.
We were able to make notification to Courtney's family at that time. Every time we tell a family their loved one is dead, and it doesn't matter if it's a Courtney Palmer with a rap sheet or somebody that is 18 years old that doesn't have a rap sheet, the reaction is the same. The family cries, and they should, and it hurts. And that takes a little piece of us too.
Lab DNA results also come back on the sock and the vacuum erection device found inside the abandoned home. It's a match to Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle.
Michaela and Gerald were charged originally with assault with intent to kill because we didn't have the body, obviously. Once Courtney's body was discovered in Muskogee, we upgraded the charge to first-degree murder.
Charletha Mack is also charged with accessory to murder.
Mack was charged with accessory to a felony, and that's, obviously because it was her house. She didn't call, she didn't intervene.
As investigators build their case for trial, they begin piecing together what led up to Courtney Palmer's gruesome homicide.
It all started on November 8th, 2016, when Carl Duke Harris was shot in an apartment complex.
Duke was Michaela's cousin. She, Duke, and Gerald were really close.
From what investigators can gather, Courtney was the one that dropped Duke off at the apartment. So that's where the rumors about Courtney being behind Duke's shooting started. Michaela and Gerald had bought into the rumors, hook, line, and sinker.
Gerald was used to meeting violence with violence.
Michaela did not have a violent criminal background like Gerald. She had never been involved in anything like this. But she trusted her man, and she agreed to go with the plan.
Michaela loved Gerald so much, she was willing to do whatever he wanted.
On the night of November 10th, Gerald and Michaela went to Charletha Mack's house and waited for Courtney to show up.
Around 3 a.m., Courtney arrived. He was talking to Charletha when Gerald and Michaela attacked, attempting to get him to admit to setting up Duke.
They tortured and beat him to death after he refused to admit that he was involved in the shooting of Duke Harris.
Once Courtney was dead, they loaded his body in a plastic tub and drove it out to the old farmhouse where Gerald sometimes stayed.
Investigators believe the first thing they did when they arrived was have sex on a mattress in the abandoned house.
They then went outside and set Courtney's body on fire along with the mattress they just used.
Soon, police will learn that this crime was even more senseless than they could have imagined.
Turns out, Duke Harris is alive. He survived the shooting, and he is adamant Courtney had nothing to do with setting him up.
Michaela and Gerald had done all this to Courtney for nothing.
I think the main thing about this case that stood out to me was it was so heinous. I don't want to make murder sound like it's run-of-the-mill, but this wasn't a run-of-the-mill murder. I mean, the parties involved in this case went to great lengths to torture Courtney, to dispose of his body in a disrespectful way, but the torture of it, I think, was very disturbing to me. You didn't normally see crimes committed in this horrific of a manner in the Black community.
Investigators in Tulsa, Oklahoma, are building their case against suspects Gerald Blow and Michaela Riddle. The couple is accused of torturing 23-year-old Courtney Palmer to death over an unsupported rumor.
So the rumor is that Courtney set up Carl Duke Harris to be shot on November 8th. But police have not been able to substantiate the claim that Courtney was behind it. All Courtney did was drop Duke off at the apartment where he was shot.
And soon, investigators receive stunning news that proves Courtney's murder was just as senseless as they thought.
Carl Harris did recover from the gunshot wounds. Whether it's a full recovery, I'm sure you shot 6 or 7 times, you're going to feel it for the rest of your life. But as far as I know, he's up and mobile.
With Carl Duke Harris healed enough to speak, detectives are able to ask him about the night he was shot.
Duke says he doesn't know who the shooter was, but is 100% certain that Courtney did not set him up.
Courtney was innocent all along.
You know, it was really unfortunate that his life would be cut short over a rumor. There was no evidence or proof that he was involved in the shooting of Duke.
Prosecutors make a deal with Charletha Mack. In exchange for 2 years in prison and 18 years on parole, she agrees to testify against Gerald and Michaela in court.
And she pleads guilty to her accessory charge.
From everything that came a lot with Lowe and Riddle, this was not going to end well for them.
In December 2019, faced with the death penalty, Gerald Lowe pleads guilty to all the charges against him. Kidnapping, first-degree murder, committing a gang-related offense, and desecration of a human corpse. He is sentenced to life in prison plus 5 years.
In Gerald Lowe's case, I was the sole fact finder and sentencing authority, if you will. He didn't have the benefit of a jury. As a judge, I weigh all the facts and what his role was in the event, and in my opinion, I gave him the sentence that I thought he deserved.
In early 2020, Michaela Riddle decides to take her chances at trial.
With regard to Michaela, I think the defense strategy was to hone in on how horrible her life had been and how she would do anything to keep the love of Gerald Lowe.
Luckily for Michaela, the jury is convinced.
When the case goes to the jury, they agree that Gerald was the mastermind behind the murder and that Michaela took part in the horrific crime to make him happy.
Michaela's charges are reduced to second-degree murder, kidnapping, and desecration of a corpse. She is sentenced to 49 years in prison.
The big difference between what Miss Riddle got and what Mr. Lowe got was she went to a jury trial and she had 12 people deciding her fate. He had me.
Do I think that justice was served? Looking back at it, knowing that Michaela got 49 years, I would have liked to have seen life without parole.
Michaela will forever have to live with the guilt of taking a young father away from his family for something he didn't even do.
She was only involved in this kind of activity because she wanted to hang on to somebody who she thought loved her.